Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Sama Bilbao y León. I am the Director General of World Nuclear Association, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you today to this UN Thematic Forum side event on the contribution of nuclear energy to net zero and the Sustainable Development Goals. This session has been co-organized by the Canadian Nuclear Association, Foratom, the Japan Atomic Industry Forum, the Nuclear Energy Institute, and of course, World Nuclear Association. And the event is sponsored by the Clean Energy Ministerial's Nice Future initiative, which, as you know, includes the governments of the United States, Canada, France, Japan, Poland, and the United Kingdom. So once again, welcome. And we really are quite thrilled to have the opportunity to talk to you today. As you know, this high-level dialogue on energy in 2021 represents the first global gathering on energy under the auspices of the General Assembly since the UN Conference on New and Renewable Sources of Energy that was held in Nairobi in 1981. This is more than 40 years. So of course, this event presents a historic opportunity to provide transformative action on the first years of the Sustainable Development Goals Decade of Action, and of course, in support of the implementation of the Paris Agreement. Of course, I think that it is a great initiative of the United Nations to actually hold these thematic forums in preparation for the summit that will take place in September 2021 in New York. So, of course, we will have the opportunity to have ministers from national governments and leaders from business, cities, civil society, and of course, youth organizations, as well as many other stakeholders. And all of you will have the opportunity to showcase solutions and to listen to solutions showcased by other people, maybe perhaps put together partnerships and coalesce onto the priorities for all these goals that the very huge challenge that we have in front of us brings us. I don't have to tell you that climate change brings an enormous and incredibly urgent challenge for us in everywhere in the world. And together with that, if that's not enough of a challenge, we also have the challenge that this needs to be done at the same time that we ensure that everybody in the world has the opportunity to achieve the quality of life that we enjoy in some countries in the world. So essentially, we need to ensure that the Sustainable Development Goals are met for everybody in the world. So in this side event, we are going to present to all of you the important role that nuclear energy alongside other clean energy technologies will have in order to achieve, number one, the Paris Agreement commitments, but also this UN 2030 agenda for sustainable development. And of course, meeting the global energy needs. So as you know, nuclear generation, and you will hear more about this in a couple of minutes, is currently the largest contributor to low carbon energy in developed countries, and the second only to hydropower at a global level. So this means, of course, that nuclear energy has been for the last 5 decades or so already enormously contributing to the minimization of carbon gas emissions and maximizing the decarbonization of the world. But we also see that because nuclear energy is the only low carbon energy source that is capable to produce electricity and heat, this brings yet additional opportunities that are quite exciting to decarbonize not only the electricity as it's been happening for the last 5 decades, but we can actually move forward and help decarbonize other hard to abate sectors such as transportation, such as industry, such as heating and cooling for buildings, such as obtaining fresh water, etc. So in this panel, in this session, we will talk to you about some of those opportunities, and I will give you some ideas on how nuclear can contribute to this huge challenge that we have in front of us. To achieve this, we are going to divide this session in two panels or two sub-panels. In the first one, we are going to have a group of speakers that are going to bring the perspective from a country point of view. And we have two examples of two countries, Poland and the United States, that are going to give us their perspective on how nuclear can contribute today and in the future to the clean energy mix and the socio-economic growth in their countries. So we are going to hear today from Dr. Catherine Huff, who is the Assistant Secretary and Principal Deputy Assistant for the Office of Nuclear Energy in the US Department of Energy and in the United States. And we also will have the opportunity to hear Mr. Tomasz Nowacki, who is the Director of Nuclear Energy Department at the Ministry of Climate and Environment in Poland. So if you don't mind, I'm going to, because we have a very tight schedule, I'm going to now invite Mr. Nowacki to provide his opening remarks.
Thank you so much. I hope you see me and you hear me. There's always something technical going on by this remote conferences. I'm very glad to be here to share our point of view with you. I can only start with confirming what you have just said, that climate change is probably the biggest, the most important driver of our efforts to introduce nuclear power or to develop more nuclear power if you have some already. And the Polish perspective is exactly like this. We are highly reliant on the coal, both on hard coal and on lignite. And of course, we have to transform our energy sector from this very dirty one to a clean one. And it's not because of our special love to any particular technology. It's not because of our special love to nuclear power, but we just came to the conclusion that we cannot transform our energy sector only with other technologies. It is renewables, of course. It's simply impossible, especially for such an industrialized nation as Poland, with 38 million people, with quite significant industry in the country, and so on and so forth. So we have to also build nuclear power. But the climate change is not the only reason. We have to transform our energy sector because our units are getting older. So we have to replace them with something else, with something which could work as a baseload electricity, but also as emission-free. And we don't have, for example, conditions for a big hydro. So the only feasible option for us to have this baseload capacity is nuclear. By the way, by the year 2043, 2045, we want to have between 6 and 9 gigawatts installed capacity in nuclear power plants in Poland, starting the operation of the first unit in 2033. Our goal is to have one strategic partner, because obviously we cannot do it alone. We do not provide nuclear technology. It should be acquired somewhere. It should be. We should buy this technology in some of the provider countries. But the idea is to have one partner, one strategic partner for decades, not only for construction, but also for the period of the operation and the commissioning, to have one technology in order to reach the scale effect. And of course, we want to retain 51% of the share of this undertaking, and up to 49% we can give to a partner. Our idea is also to concentrate on already proven technologies, because we don't have time to wait for coming technologies, like, for example, SMRs. On the other hand, we cross fingers for all new developments, because the more technologies we have, the better choices we make. But the problem with SMRs from our perspective is that they do not exist, and we don't have time to wait. we should start as soon as possible, and we should provide our economy with very, very large volumes of carbon-free electricity. So we concentrate on large PWRs. That's written in the policy of the government. In both strategic documents, one of those is the nuclear power program for Poland, accepted last year, and the second one confirming this idea, but also building with other aspects, is a general energy policy for Poland until 2040. But of course, realizing it's a very huge project, and it's not only complicated itself, but it's a multi-layered structure with very much potential places where we can face some problems. And one of those problems is, for example, the regulatory policy of, let's say, European Union, for example. We expect that all those provisions, for example, from the Euratom Treaty, will be realized, like it has been done in two last cases, so to speak, in Europe. So Hinkley Point C and Poksh in Hungary. But of course, we observe a struggle, for example, with the taxonomy. Should nuclear be regarded as green, as environmental friendly investment or not? And of course, our answer is absolutely yes. It's inevitable to have nuclear power in the energy mix. It's simply impossible to speak only about renewables, which are absolutely fantastic technology. And we also represent this holistic approach in the transformation. We want to have both nuclear power plants and also renewables like wind, like offshore wind, onshore wind, and photovoltaic. So I think that will be one of the most challenges we will face. I mean, to convince also other countries and organizations that it's absolutely crucial for the fight against climate change, that we keep already running nuclear power plants, and then we keep supporting nuclear power as a green source of energy. Because if we consider climate change as a real threat, it should apply a policy like, all hands on deck. We don't have time, we don't have resources, we are not in the moment to decide that, okay, we will do it, but without this, without that. No, we should apply all possible technologies. And it's not only our voice, it's the voice of actually most environmentalists right now. I think the nuclear as a clean source of energy, this is a voice which is dominating right now, which is now pushing back all those old, let's say, views from the 80s, from the early 90s maybe. And we should go that way. We should use all technologies, and nuclear among them is one of the most important instruments to fight climate change.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for those very, very clear and very assertive remarks from Poland. So if now I would like to invite Dr. Catherine Huff to provide the remarks from the U.S. Department of Energy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bilbao-León. Sama. As Sama shared, I'm Katie Huff, Acting Assistant Secretary for Nuclear Energy at the U.S. Department of Energy, and it is my distinct honor to address the UN community as you build your recommendations for an energy roadmap for the 26th UN Climate Change Conference, COP26, and beyond. On his very first day in office, President Biden signed the instrument to bring the United States back into the Paris Agreement. The U.S. is ready to participate in COP26 and to work with other countries to ensure a successful outcome. President Biden has pledged to do everything possible to power our country with clean energy, using every clean energy option available. He's laid out the boldest climate agenda in our nation's history. So let there be no doubt, carbon-free nuclear energy is absolutely vital to achieving our decarbonization goals, because nuclear energy working in tandem with renewable energy and other clean energy sources is the only way to reach our ambitious goals, which include a 50% reduction in our carbon emissions by the end of the decade, 100% clean energy generation by 2035, and a net zero economy by 2050. Nuclear energy produces about 1/3 of the world's non-emitting electricity. As Sama mentioned, in the US, nuclear energy contributes more than half of our clean electricity. It produces no carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, mercury, or the particulates that cause smog. Nuclear energy also operates reliably, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so beyond providing clean heat and electricity, nuclear systems also enable variable renewable technology, support the production of life-saving medical isotopes, drive industrial processes, and they can produce hydrogen for transportation and industrial products. They can even desalinate and purify water. But visionary planning for future clean energy in many parts of the world often fails to include nuclear energy, and I applaud the Clean Energy Ministerial's Nuclear Innovation Clean Energy Future, also referred to as the NICE Future initiative, for co-sponsoring today's event so that we can broaden the discussion about how nuclear is pivotal for robust clean energy solutions. Breakthroughs in flexible systems, such as those discussed by NICE Future, seamlessly integrate and leverage the strengths of both nuclear and renewable generation. This will add resilience, reliability, and enhanced affordability to those solutions. Now, I want to assure you that in the US, our focus on nuclear energy isn't just talk. The Biden administration's 2022 budget request for the Department of Energy made that clear. It calls for a record $1.8 billion in funding for our nuclear energy program. This is our largest proposed investment ever. It preserves the vital clean air benefits of our existing nuclear fleets, because we absolutely must keep those powerhouses of clean energy up and running. And old or new, all plants contain cutting-edge safety features, instrumentation and control systems, and advanced nuclear fuels. In many cases, some of them are developed at DOE's national laboratories. So the administration is working on giving these plants a production credit as well that values their clean energy performance. By requesting funding to increase their cost-effective operation and maintenance, President Biden is really making today's fleet a priority. And that includes developing and deploying new and improved fuels to enhance their performance and reduce their costs. DOE, of course, is continuing to partner with these existing nuclear facilities to further increase their revenue opportunities through the production of clean, non-electric products like hydrogen. But we're also excited to look ahead to the next generation of nuclear energy technologies. With this robust budget, it's time to shift nuclear research and development into hyperdrive, hand in hand with industry partners, so that they can deploy new advanced products while ensuring environmental sustainability. With support from the programs in my office, such as the Department of Energy's Office of the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program, the US industry stands at the forefront of our innovation. And today, more US companies than ever are developing advanced reactor designs. They have the potential for greater flexibility in power, size, and operation. And we hope that that will make them more affordable to both build and operate. These concepts are very real, and they are ready to support a variety of energy demands and applications. We're investing heavily in them, including smaller scale systems such as small modular reactors and microreactors, which are now on the cusp of commercial deployment. We expect these will enable nuclear energy to support flexible integration with renewable power and industrial processes, as well as provide reliable rural electrification in the hardest to reach areas, and potentially bringing clean energy to all corners of the world. These reactors can potentially be sited at retiring coal plant sites, using the existing infrastructure and skilled workforce there where possible. We have one of our Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program awardees, TerraPower, has recently announced that its demonstration reactor, Matrium, will be built in Wyoming at one such plant. So we are hoping to decarbonize our electric sector and power our clean energy future while supporting good paying energy jobs in Wyoming. This is huge, and we're committed to seeing this reactor built. This budget request supports the demonstration of 2 such advanced reactors in the next 6 years, but also developing and demonstrating many additional designs by the mid-2030s. So this is all also including the nation's first fast test reactor in more than 2 decades, the Versatile Test Reactor, which is funded under this budget to be built. And so all of this together is going to be vital to accelerating the testing of our advanced nuclear fuels, instrumentation, and sensors. You know, in this international context, lots of countries are turning to nuclear energy to meet energy growth needs and support your nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement, many countries also see nuclear as an important option to provide energy diversity and security. So we look forward to continuing to develop new and enhanced strategic relationships. As we think about clean energy, we need to make sure that energy technologies lift up communities, both in the US and abroad, by preserving natural resources with the use of less land, providing equity in electricity access, and providing high-paying long-term jobs. So to close, I'll just say the climate emergency is intensifying every single day, ravaging our planet. We cannot miss our opportunity to harness nuclear energy's full clean energy potential. And given the importance of nuclear energy to our global mission to achieve climate change goals, I urge the UN to put nuclear energy at the heart of its roadmap. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Katie, for those very uplifting remarks. So if I can please ask both Thomas and Katie to turn on your camera so we can maybe start a very brief roundtable conversation on the point of view of governments. So again, thank you both for bringing these very strong remarks. I mean, I think it's very important to show the leadership from the point of view of governments. And in that sense, maybe let me ask you both a question. So obviously, I think that the leadership and the support of governments and policymakers for nuclear energy, I think is going to be quite important to really instill a sense of confidence in the investment community, in the development community, to make sure that there is a continuity and a support for this type of technology. So what do you think are maybe additional ways in which governments can really show this leadership and help address and bring forward any development in nuclear technology? I don't know who would like to start. Katie, go ahead.
I can briefly just say, it is important for the US government to present as a first mover in these advanced technologies, to provide confidence in their licensing structures, and to sort of show how it can be done sort of safely and confidently in the world. I think this is something that we do well in the United States, and I think we look forward to doing this again with this new generation of advanced reactors. Additionally, as we sort of approach all of these new reactors, it'll be essential to show and demonstrate their capable integration with renewables as we look forward to our electric grid looking much more carbon zero. So those demonstrations will instill confidence that they can all play nicely together.
Mm-hmm. Thomas.
Well, I think the state support, a clear policy vision of a government is probably, after public acceptance, the most important factor in if you want to build nuclear power plant anywhere in any country, in any technology, because you may have money, you may have very good regulations. Okay, you may have public support as well, which is not always the case, but without this strong support from the government, it will be very hard to build to construct any, at least large power plant. And the examples from the world shows exactly the same. If there is a determination of the government, as we may have seen, for example, in the United Arab Emirates recently, then of course there will always be problems, but they all will be solved. And the thing I'm afraid most is that in some places, there may be a lack of this determination, or while the government is changing, the other government may be of different, may have a different policy line. That's something which absolutely kills all big infrastructure projects, and especially those projects as nuclear, because of the sensitivity on many levels. So yes, absolutely, the determination of government is absolutely crucial. And speaking about US, I think it's very important that this administration again shows a sign that nuclear is a very important part of the carbon-free energy mix. And I look forward to see what will be the developments in the US with zero emission credits for already running plants. I think it will be the first, let's say, examination of the goodwill of the new administration, because we know there are many very good plants in the United States, but they may lose the competitiveness against gas, against the other supported sources like renewables. So this and of course it's crucial to support exports of the technology, supports not only by declaration but also financially.
Very good. No, those are very important points, obviously. So let me go a little bit further. So we talked about the importance of decarbonization in the context of Paris Agreement and climate change. But there is this second aspect that I mentioned earlier that I definitely do not want to leave behind. And it's the concept of global equality and making sure that there is a fair access to affordable, clean energy from everybody in the world. So I think that in this particular sense, nuclear energy brings particularly exciting opportunities. And I would say that this is particularly important also in the context of this post-COVID economic recovery that many countries are trying to achieve while continuing with the clean energy transition. So what do you think are the opportunities that nuclear energy can afford to really catalyze economic development and socioeconomic growth, not only in advanced economies, but also in developing countries or countries that are moving forward, trying to reach the same quality of life that some of us enjoy in developed countries? Maybe I'll start with you, Katie, again.
Sure. Of course, because the climate crisis will affect all of us in the world, any work by any country should lift all boats. And it is one of the most serious threats our planet has ever faced. So we need from governments really bold vision and impactful action inside their countries, but policymakers need to assess any kinds of policies that hinder nuclear innovation, including investment in exports and environmental justice across and outside of their borders. I think government officials need to work really closely with industry to support innovation during this extremely critical window of time. And we have to find solutions to these challenges. You know, domestically, we're working with our industry and investing really robustly in accelerating the timeframes for new and innovative technologies. And we really need to deploy those reactors here in the United States, but also, you know, in response to your question about the fair and equitable access to this kind of clean energy, I think the nuclear has a series of benefits in this regard, and government officials really have a responsibility to ensure that they're available to all, especially underserved and underrepresented communities, you know, underrepresented nations. And I will say that the air we breathe and our desire for a cleaner planet connect us all in this quest for a decent quality of life. And I hope that as we pursue our own ambitions, we don't forget, you know, as government officials, that there needs to be some real evaluation of our approaches that hinder that innovation and investment worldwide.
Thank you, Katie. Thomas.
Well, I think what we can, according to our analysis, what we can gain from nuclear power projects as such, the most important thing is cheap and reliable electricity. And I think you can build everything on that. We know, I mean, according to our analysis, crossed with any others from all over the world, we came to the conclusion that nuclear power in the long run will provide the society and the economy with the cheapest energy in the next decades. So I think it's the most important driver of let's say, economical revival or economical boost. But of course, every big infrastructure project is a boost as such because of the big amount of money invested in one place, thousands of workers directly and indirectly connected to the investment, to the plant, to the site. So it will have a very, very positive impact on many levels, on many areas if you decide to build nuclear power. And of course, having cheap electricity that will be consumed by the whole economy, by the whole society. So everyone will be able to feel the effect of the nuclear power program. And not everyone can afford a solar panel, but everyone has to be provided with electricity. And this is the role of the state as well, to provide electricity for everyone, not only for those who are in the situation to be able to invest their own money for let's say renewables or other things. So I think it's a multi-layered aspect of this, and yeah, I think it will be very positive in many different areas.
Yeah, thank you both. I mean, I think that you both brought quite interesting points. I mean, regarding, so as you just said, Thomas, the importance to looking at the entire system, bringing in together all the different resources to make sure that the system as a whole is more stable, more reliable, more affordable for everybody, which of course will bring excellent opportunities for growth and development. And then another thing that Katie mentioned earlier that I think is just as important is bringing these nuclear projects will also help to transition people that are perhaps working currently in the fossil fuel economy into exciting, well-paid and long-term careers that are going to also be very rewarding. So that also is going to help bring those people into a new phase of their careers. So let me ask you maybe the last question before we move to the second part of our panel. And this is related to the exciting opportunities that I mentioned earlier, how nuclear energy can actually help not only decarbonize the electricity system, which is of course quite important and will be incredibly helpful as we move towards decarbonization, but clearly there are many other sectors of the economy that need to be also abated, and nuclear also brings some possibilities there. So do you have some thoughts at your country level of how to maybe take advantage of these opportunities? I will start with you again, Katie, if you don't mind.
Sure, happy to do it. So, in order to sort of catalyze economic growth in the United States, there's such a huge focus on the creation and sustenance of jobs. As you were talking about just a moment ago, President Biden strongly believes that by addressing the climate crisis and building new reactors and sustaining the existing fleet, integrating those reactors with renewable energy systems and innovating in terms of the hydrogen economy, we could create millions of good jobs, build really sustainable infrastructure, which supports long-term economic growth, hold polluters accountable, and secure some real environmental justice for communities in the United States for whom that hasn't always been true. But nuclear energy, of course, in the United States, we see as a massive job creator. It adds over $60 billion to the US economy today and employs over 475,000 people in both direct and indirect, really well-paid jobs. And that's more than any other energy source per megawatt. And so as we look forward to growth and catalyzation of development, our work on next generation nuclear technologies will be structured around deployment strategies that help spread that economic activity to the communities that have really been left behind and unheard from for too long. And so I think that will really leapfrog our ability to grow those economies and grow justice as well. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thomas.
Of course, you may not only provide electricity by help of nuclear power plants. You can make many different things like desalination or industrial applications. But in country such Poland, we do concentrate merely on electricity, and we don't have problems with fresh water yet, but it can come. You never know with this rapid climate changes. The thing we will examine for sure is a potential for cogeneration, because nuclear is the only source which can deliver you emission-free cogeneration, providing both electricity and heat to the households, to the businesses, to the industry. So that will be examined for sure, because the regular fleet of reactors can provide this and that. But also we have a small, it is much smaller than this big nuclear power program. We have a small research program on HDR. It's a very initial phase, but still, and we want to examine potential for industrial application, especially for providing industry with high temperature heat. So that's maybe another aspect which goes beyond electricity only. But in general, we concentrate on electricity because that's our main concern right now.
Very good. Thank you both. So, I mean, I really think that your remarks have been incredibly valuable. I mean, I think that we all are looking forward to continue seeing the leadership of thought that we have seen coming from the United States and coming from Poland, because you know, as many countries are moving forward with pledges for net zero commitments or to meet Paris Agreement commitments, I think it is very important to actually be to see the seriousness and the focus that we are seeing in Poland and the US to actually come up with actionable and practical ways to really achieve those goals, which of course in both cases happens to include nuclear energy. So thank you both very much for your remarks. So I am going to ask you to please turn off your cameras for now as we go to the second part of our event. So in this second part, we are going to have the industry perspective on the global on the role of nuclear energy. So essentially, what we are looking now is to three leaders from the global nuclear industry that are going to bring forward some ideas on how the nuclear industry can contribute to a cost-effective, just and all-inclusive transition towards clean energy, basically addressing the needs and the gaps that the countries have just expressed. So for that, we are super lucky today to have three fabulous speakers. So first we have Mr. Johan Svenningsson, who is the CEO and country chairman of Uniper in Sweden. We also have Mr. Hidehito Mimaki, who is the general manager of nuclear energy systems at Mitsubishi Heavy Industries Limited in Japan. And last, and of course not least, we have Mr. John Gorman, who is the president and CEO of the Canadian Nuclear Association and past president and CEO of the Canadian Solar Industries Association. So what I will do now is I will invite Mr. Johan Svenningsson to start with his opening remarks.
Yes, thank you, Sama. Thank you for inviting me to this very interesting meeting, because I think this is really critical for both the electricity development in Sweden, not in Sweden, in the world, but also the decarbonization. Because if we don't decarbonize the world, we will not succeed. We all know that. And I have a few slides that I want to show and talk about, and please ask some questions, and then we have an interesting discussion later on. So I will try to share my slides here. Yes. We, from Uniper side, we're one of the global energy companies, and we really see that nuclear is a key element in the global decarbonization. And I think we're talking a lot about the sustainable development goals and the need for decarbonization of the world. But we should not forget, and in the left-hand corner of this is the World Energy Outlook from IEA from not this year, but last year, that we also have a significant increase of electricity and energy demand in the world. In total, we can see an increase up to 2040, about 55% of increase of electricity generation. Also on the gas side, we see a large increase, and that will be the challenge to decarbonize the gas. That's why hydrogen is so interesting, also in the combination with nuclear. And we see that the global primary energy demand is an increase by 23%. And just decarbonizing our current fleet and our current production will be a huge challenge, but now we should increase the electricity production by another 50%. We can also see that there's a lot of new sectors coming in this electrification, and I will come into that a little bit later on from a Swedish perspective. We can see here that we all know the transportation sector will be a huge increase. It's coming from low levels because it's basically trains today and some electrification of the car fleets, but basically more than 400% increase in the transportation sector. On the household side, it's about 60%, and on the industry side, it's about 45%. And I would say when we now calculate from a Swedish perspective, but also if we do it globally, I'm sure that this 45% will increase even more, because we know there's a lot of fossil fuels that is in the industry today that we need to take out. That could be in the petrochemical industry, that could be in the steel industry, could be in the cement industry. So we will need a lot more electricity combined with hydrogen on the industry side. We from Uniper side, we have decided that in our European generation fleet, we should be carbon neutral by 2035. And this is a big challenge. I mean, we have operations in large parts of Europe. And of course, we have a history with coal plants, gas plants, and we're now phasing out all the coal plants. And then the next step will then be to decarbonize our gas plants. And in our whole operations, we said we're going to be carbon neutral by 2050. That is for our full international power generation, but also in our trading and global commodities. And here we have defined a portfolio which we see will meet these demands. And in the center, we have nuclear. That's going to be one of the key elements for us to decarbonize our portfolio. We already today have a large hydro fleet. We have a quite sizable nuclear fleet. We do have renewables, but we're going to grow quite significantly in renewables. And then we're going to transition, especially on the gas side, to hydrogen. And if we have any thermal generation left, that will be from biomass, or it will be coupled with CCS and CCU. What we know, and I think a lot of people here know that nuclear has probably the largest potential to meet these needs. It's fossil free. It has a large capacity, and it's actually one of the most efficient ways to scale up and phase out fossil fuels quickly. It is also a baseload that was mentioned by our Poland representative here. There is a baseload that can produce stable and predictable power. And the wind doesn't blow all the time. The sun doesn't shine all the time. And we know we can solve that through batteries, through converting to hydrogen, but we'll get an extremely expensive and complicated system. So we need a combination of both the baseload and the variable renewables that will come on top of that. Another item where we can see from a Swedish perspective, and as we see that also in a German perspective, is when we lose the system services like inertia, reactive power that is stabilizing the system. We see already now in the Nordic system that we have much more frequency deviations. We haven't had any brownouts or blackouts, but we've been pretty close actually a couple of times when there has been some faults of some of the big interlinks to Europe. We also know that we can locate nuclear basically everywhere. And also now with the floating nuclear power plants, we can actually build them and then transport them to remote locations to support industries, societies, and also in areas where there's a remote locations where usually there's fossil fuels driven. And then lastly, and we touched upon that, the combination of nuclear and hydrogen is really interesting, both for the high temperature reactors where you can produce hydrogen very efficiently, but also with a much more flexible energy system we will have, with much more variation and more volatile system. A combination of nuclear and hydrogen will enable nuclear to run baseload, and when it's a volatile market, we can switch over to produce hydrogen instead, and then we can use nuclear as it best. If I look, and these are in Swedish, I apologize for that, but I will translate that for you. We see on the Swedish perspective, in the Nordic industry, but also on the European level, that decarbonizing industry is almost a second electrical revolution. In Sweden, we have a strong industrial background. We have steel industry, we have a mining industry, we have forest industry, petrochemicals, a lot of heavy industry, which is using a lot of energy. And also, as I said before, a lot of this energy is also now fossil fuels. It's coal in the steel manufacturing. It is fossil fuels in the petrochemical industry. And if we should decarbonize our full society, this is one of the key areas. In Sweden, we already have a decarbonized energy system based on hydro and nuclear and some wind. But so there we don't have a problem to phase out fossil fuels. But on the industry side, we will use a lot of electricity. On the left-hand side, this was a forecast that was just done 1 or 2 years ago when we had an increase from our current level of about 140, 150 terawatt hours to a level a little bit more than 200 terawatt hours. That is a quite sizable increase. It's about 30%. But now there's been about 3 or 4 different studies that is now really looking what it takes to take out the fossil fuels out of the industry. And we're now looking on levels of more than 300 terawatt hours. And this is not including potential for exporting hydrogen. It is to use a lot of hydrogen in the industry to replace fossil fuels. But we also see with the European energy transition that will be a huge amount of hydrogen that's going to be needed. And Sweden, with cheap hydropower, stable nuclear power, could also use hydrogen and export capabilities to decarbonize the European industry. And I will just show these bars here. This is the growth of electricity that is assumed on the industry side, coming from about 50 terawatt hours per year up to a level to between 150 and 200 terawatt hours up to 2045. And 2045 seems maybe far away, but 25 years of rebuilding a total energy structure is really challenging. So we have a huge challenge. It's really interesting. I'm sure we can solve it, but we will take both nations, industry to work together, and I think we will be happy to support that. So thank you, Sama, and I stop sharing the slides here.
Thank you very much, Johan, for your remarks. Certainly you have given us a very good vision of the size of the challenge that we have in front of us. So thank you for that. So now I would like to invite Mr. Hidehito Maki to start his remarks.
Thank you very much. This is my name is Hidehito Maki at Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. I'd like to make a presentation on the high temperature gas-cooled reactor for hydrogen production. That is nuclear technology beyond electricity. Okay. Please go to the next slide. Next slide, please. This is just our company profile. Next slide, please. Let me briefly explain the introduction of the MHI nuclear energy systems. MHI is the only PWR manufacturer in Japan, and we have been involved in the construction of 24 PWRs to date. The previous slide, please. Yes, no. The previous slide. Yes, this one, yeah. MHI provides integrated service covering R&D, design, manufacturing, construction, and maintenance. Okay, next slide, please. This slide, next slide, yes. This slide shows the roadmap for the nuclear energy's contribution to carbon neutrality. Nuclear energy is a carbon-free, large-scale, and reliable power source that also serves an important energy security role. Therefore, it is essential that nuclear energy utilization is maintained and expanded in the future in order to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. It is a Japanese target. In the short term, MHI will focus on the restart of existing plants after the Fukushima accident. In parallel, we work on the development of the new light water reactor design. In the midterm, MHI will develop new reactor types such as high temperature gas-cooled reactors in order to satisfy diversifying social needs. Furthermore, from a long-term perspective, we will make the challenge to realize fusion reactors, which is considered a dream energy source. Today, I will introduce our efforts in hydrogen production using high temperature gas-cooled reactors. Next slide, please. This slide shows the features of high temperature gas-cooled reactors, HTGL. A high temperature gas-cooled reactor is a nuclear reactor that has no risk of a core meltdown accident due to inherent safety. Graphite used as core components and ceramic coated fuels have very high heat resistance, more than 1000 Celsius. And the helium gas used as a coolant is chemical inert and does not chemically react with core or structure materials. So therefore, HCGL has no risk of a commuter accident. That is a very important feature. Next slide, please. In Japan, there is a test reactor of 30 megawatt output called HTTL, High Temperature Engineering Test Reactor. HTTL was constructed in 1990s, and it has been confirmed that it can generate high temperature gas of 50 Celsius. Okay. Next slide, please. This slide shows the MHI experiences in HTTL project. MHI has provided key components of HTTL and promoted the research and development for HTTL applications, such as power generation by helium gas turbine, and also hydrogen productions. Okay. Next slide, please. And based on the experience of high temperature test reactor, MHI is developing on the large scale high temperature gas reactor with Japanese government support. HCGL can provide carbon-free high temperature heat over 900 Celsius, and this heat can be used for stable and large amounts of hydrogen productions. Okay? And the produced hydrogen can then be used for hydrogen reduction ion making, which will have positive effect on to society, such as the prevention of carbon generations. Okay. Next slide, please. And this slide shows the benefits of hydrogen production by HTGL compared to the production by solar power. Steel industry, hydrogen reaction ion making would require large amounts of hydrogen 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. And the vast area would be required to supply this large amount of hydrogen for ion making process. And if we compare the scale of HEGL to that of the solar power plant, the solar power plant will be more than 1,000 times larger than HEGL to produce the same amount of hydrogen. Okay. Next, please. This slide shows our summary, my presentation. Nuclear energy is an important carbon-free, large-scale, reliable power source and is necessary to achieve carbon neutrality for the future. And MHI is developing several types of new reactors in order to satisfy diversifying social needs, especially beyond electricity. High temperature gas-cooled reactors can be used for stable and large amounts of hydrogen productions. And the hydrogen generated by high HEGL, high temperature gas-cooled reactors, will contribute to the decarbonization in steel and other industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mimaki-san. I think that you presented us with very exciting opportunities, very exciting ideas to use nuclear energy well beyond the electricity production. So thank you very much. So let me now please invite Mr. John Gorman to make his remarks.
Thank you very much, Sam, and I am delighted to be here today to talk a little bit about Canadian perspective on nuclear and nuclear towards net zero, and of course delighted to be here at this side event for the UN Forum on this high-level energy dialogue and discussion. As you mentioned, I am the president and CEO of the Canadian Nuclear Association. Long-time background in electricity, but I think notably in the renewable sector. I spent a large part of my career as both a developer of course, an advocate for solar power. But when you look at some of the challenges that we face here for decarbonization and some of the uses that and sectors that we look at decarbonizing, clearly from the earlier speakers, we see that nuclear is going to be required. And indeed, in the 20 years that I've been in the electricity sector, we know that from the International Energy Agency's analysis, 20 years ago, we had 36% non-emitting electricity on the world's grids. And today, 20 years later, despite the phenomenal rollout of wind and solar globally and the low cost of solar and the trillions of dollars of investment in renewables, we're still at 36% non-emitting electricity on the world's grids, right? So we haven't made a dent in that. I think renewables has helped us stay at a steady state despite rising demand. But clearly, if we're going to aggressively reduce GHGs and decarbonize economies around the world, we're going to have to find a better partner for renewables than the fossil fuels that are currently being used. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Canadian experience in this regard, and I'm hoping that we can pull up the slides. I've got a few slides here that I'd like to walk through by way of a guidance. So a little bit about nuclear in Canada. We have had, we're a tier 1 nuclear nation. We've been operating our own CANDU conventional heavy water plants here for over 50 years, very, very successfully. It supplies about 15% of the nation's electricity. And notably, it provides about 2/3 of Canada's most populous province, Ontario, 2/3 of its electricity, and about 1/3 of New Brunswick, the province of New Brunswick's electricity. We are leaders in the development of isotopes. And nuclear medicine. It's a very large contributor to our economy from a jobs perspective and also from a GDP perspective. Right now in Ontario, we are taking our existing nuclear plants and we're refurbishing 9 units here. This refurbishment is the largest infrastructure project in Canada right now. It's a $26 billion 10-year endeavor, and it's on the basis of this refurbishment that we're not only employing a lot of people, but doing some incredible innovation, both in nuclear medicine and in the development of small modular reactors and the next generation of scalable nuclear. We also have an ecosystem here in Canada that it runs the sort of the full spectrum of services and products. We are the world's second largest producer and exporter of uranium, for example. I just want to take a moment to talk about the innovation that we're doing on the small modular reactor front. Canada truly is a first mover in small modular reactors. We have 12 different technologies that are going through the license and review process now. Some of them getting into the latter stages of that process, and one of them that's actually entered the licensing process. This has been a tremendous collaboration between government and industry, both our national government, but also our provincial governments, 4 provincial governments here that have signed an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding for the Development and Deployment of Small Modular Reactors. I wanted to react to Minister Nowaki's comments, Thomas, just to talk a little bit about timelines from a Canadian perspective here. Thomas, I know that you expressed a desire to be actively pursuing the conventional reactors because the timelines for small modular reactors are longer and not suitable for some of the things that you have to achieve in Poland. That being said, in Canada here, we are going to see the first very small reactors being built in the 2026 timeframe over at our Canadian National Laboratories. But this will be a sort of full-scale small modular reactor. And our largest utility, Ontario Power Generation, has committed to connecting its first small modular reactor, a 300 megawatt reactor, to the electricity grid here in Ontario in 2028. So these timelines are actually much closer than many people assume. Could we go to the next slide, please? So Canada itself, along with other nations, of course, has aggressive timelines for and targets for GHG reductions. We've recently increased ours. Not only do we have a phase out of all coal-fired electricity generation by 2030 nationally, but now we are aiming to have reduce our GHGs by 40 to 45% by 2030. And of course, we've committed to a net zero 2050. Next slide, please. Now, in the case of Canada, you know, our challenge, unlike other nations, our immediate challenge is not around electricity. So our electricity grid is quite clean. We have about 82% non-emitting electricity nationwide, which means that when we go to try to achieve our aggressive GHG reduction targets, we're having to look elsewhere other than the electricity sector for those sort of GHG savings. And for the Canadian economy, which is very heavily dependent on natural resources and heavy industry, it means that we have to address emissions in that hard to decarbonize sectors, including you know, oil and gas, mining, steel, cement production, etc. So this is where small modular reactors come into play, and one of the reasons why Canada is putting such a priority on the development and deployment of various technologies in the small modular reactor realm. Next slide, please. So to look at how small modular reactors are going to be of assistance in Canada in decarbonizing our heavy industry, we commissioned a study looking very specifically at how small modular reactors are going to decarbonize heavy industry using heat, high temperature heat. So we sort of put aside the electricity production, we put aside the hydrogen production aspects, which are also valued here, and we looked at that. We went to the nation's you know, foremost economic and environmental modeling company to do the modeling, same company that does the work for our federal government and a number of our provincial governments. And I want to share some of the findings with you. Next slide, please. So we had the modeling company, which has a model of our entire country from a sectoral point of view, and it incorporates all of the existing climate policies and things that we have in it. And we had them run 10 different scenarios for us that looked at introducing small modular reactors into the Canadian economy and competed small modular reactors and our known cost projections against other known technologies and developing technologies that are available to decarbonize heavy industry. And what we found across all 10 models was that the SMRs delivered low cost emission reductions and actually drove down the cost of our nation getting to net zero. Next slide, please. So I'll get into some specific findings in just a minute, but in addition to there being low cost emission reductions in all scenarios, we also found that our pathway to net zero was accelerated, and the cost of getting there was lower, and there was significant contribution to the GDP, which is a pretty rare combination of things to be able to achieve with any technology, one technology being able to do all three of those things. The other thing that I'd mention is that despite the fact we are aggressively pursuing a hydrogen economy here in Canada, and we are looking at other needed solutions like carbon capture and storage, the effect of introducing small modular reactors into the Canadian heavy industry did not cannibalize other clean technologies. In fact, it enabled the relatively scarce hydrogen and carbon capture storage technologies and other technologies that are developing now to be used in other sectors and other applications, and thereby accelerated the work that we were able to do in other sectors in terms of lowering GHGs. Next slide, please. So here are a few of the specific findings that we got, and these findings are the average or the mid-case findings. So we had some lower, some higher results in terms of GHG reductions and contributions to GDP, etc. But this was the mid case. And as I said, in all cases, we found that small modular reactors lowered emissions and contributed to the economy. So we're looking at a reduction of about 18% of emissions in our heavy industry by 2050. And to put that in perspective, our heavy industry is responsible for about 30% of the emissions that we produce here in Canada. So it's quite significant. We found it would be reducing emissions by an average of 14 megatons per year. And in total, looking at about 15 megatons in the heavy industry sector alone. We also found that the SMRs would lower the country's cost of reaching net zero by more than 5%, which is obviously very significant, and that we would be contributing up to $5 billion annually in GDP by 2050. So on all of these fronts, some very promising findings for small modular reactor technology. If I could leave you with the message that Canada really has made very significant strides in terms of the development and deployment of small modular reactors. And we see tremendous potential here, not just from an electricity point of view, but the use of the high temperature heat to reduce emissions in heavy industry. Thank you, Sama.
Thank you very much, John. So if I may please ask the three panelists, Johan, Mimaki-san, and John, please stay on. So I think that the three of you have given us very, very excellent perspectives on the fact that nuclear energy is a realistic and proven choice that we have to achieve decarbonization, not only of the electricity markets, as we heard at the beginning from Johan, but also it provides great opportunities for the decarbonization of other sectors beyond electricity, as we just heard from John and earlier from Mimaki-san. So, and the size of the challenge is enormous. So clearly the nuclear industry really needs to step up to the plate. So in your opinion, what do you think are the challenges that the nuclear industry needs to address, perhaps with the support of governments and policymakers in order to be able to achieve these enormous challenges? So maybe I'll start with you, John, since you have your microphone open.
Yeah, thank you, Sama, and I'll remember to close that going forward here. Look, I think one of the major challenges has been mentioned by a couple of our speakers, and that is the trouble that we're having getting a consistent definition of nuclear power as clean, non-emitting, and therefore, in taxonomy, and therefore eligible for the increasing amount of support that is policy support and funding support that is being given to clean technologies. Here in the Canadian context, we've made a great deal of progress on that over the last 2 years. But it was only last year that we had our national government actually formally declare nuclear as clean and also essential to a net zero 2050. So we need to achieve that sort of consistent, firm definition across the world for nuclear to be able to grow and be maintained in the way that it needs to.
Thank you, John. Johan, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think that's very important. I think that we should have a level playing field, and I think we really need to see what is the main goal. Well, we need to decarbonize the global economy, and then we need to use all sources. We cannot just use one or two, we need all of them. And therefore, nuclear needs to have the same conditions as renewables, for example. I think European Union is a typical example that must change. And I think we as an industry, we must also be much better of delivering our projects. If we look in the Western world, we as an industry have failed. I would use those words because the new build projects have not been successful, and we need to make sure that that happens. So that could be through uniform standards, uniform regulations, because we see the fleet approach is working, is working. We built up the current fleet. It works in Asia where you have the larger fleet. So it will come, but we as an industry must also contribute to that. And then the last item is also really to understand the system cost. I mean, we need the market models. We need to have the full understanding. In Sweden, we have done several studies really showing that a balanced system, in our case with hydro, nuclear, and renewables, that will give the absolute cheapest system cost, and that needs to come in place also.
Yeah, thank you, Johan. You do bring very excellent points. Mimaki-san, would you like to add something on your side?
Yes, as far as Japan is concerned, nuclear power is an important power source for the future. But since the accident at Fukushima, we consider restoration of public confidence in nuclear power to be the most important. And decarbonization is strongly linked to the hydrogen society. And in order to realize a hydrogen society, it is necessary to supply a large amount of hydrogen at a low cost. And I believe the nuclear energy is a very reliable and realistic solution to this end.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. You know, I think that unfortunately we are getting very close to the end of our session. So if I could please invite all the speakers, Katie, Thomas, if you are still with us, could you please turn on your cameras? Because I would like to provide maybe my closing remarks. I'm going to try to summarize some of the very interesting things that I hope everybody has learned through this session. So once again, I think that this session has probably given policymakers in the UN context the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the very important role that nuclear energy will be able to play along with other low carbon energy sources to help the world decarbonize, meet the global challenges that the Paris Agreement poses to all of that, but just as importantly, do so making sure that we actually do this in a just and balanced manner, making sure that we don't leave anybody behind, and all the humans in the world can actually achieve the standard of living that we all think everybody deserves. So all those things are very important. So in that sense, we really look to the leadership of the policymakers and the leaders of the world to really provide the support that nuclear energy needs in order to really bring this confidence and maybe regain the trust of the public on the very important role that nuclear can play moving forward. And then perhaps I will summarize a couple of things that are, I think, in my opinion, quite important that were brought up by all of you. Policymakers' leadership is very important to ensure that there is going to be a level playing field for all low carbon energy sources. This means, of course, that there will be a level playing field in policies and in markets in order to effectively deploy nuclear energy along other low carbon energy sources. And in that sense, as we just heard, it's incredibly important to make sure that it is possible to unlock affordable, low-cost finance for nuclear projects, actually for all low-carbon projects, but perhaps nuclear projects, given the size of some of these projects, may be a little bit more challenging. And then I will close by very fact, turning to ourselves, to the global nuclear industry. We are making enormous efforts to really streamline the way we operate, streamline our standards, our licensing procedures, our regulatory frameworks, so we can be much more cost effective, much more easy to deploy at a global level, and really take advantage of the global supply chains and the global economics and the global needs for affordable and clean energy. So we very much look forward to continue engage in this process that the United Nations has started in order to revisit and to assess the issue of low carbon energy, which clearly is absolutely vital and it is crucial as we are right now. So as I said, the global nuclear industry is very happy to engage and to provide policymakers with all the information, all the facts and all the all the information that you need to make your policy decisions. So with this, we have actually reached the end of our event. So I want to take the opportunity to, first of all, thank all of our speakers. I really cannot thank you enough for providing this very insightful and very very detailed remarks that hopefully have given very good insight to the policymakers participating in the event. I also want to thank the co-organizers of this event, the Canadian Nuclear Association for Atom, the Japan Atomic Industry Forum, the Nuclear Energy Institute, and World Nuclear Association. And just as importantly, I want to thank our sponsor, the Clean Energy Ministerial Nice Future Initiative. And then finally, last but not least, I want to thank all of you that are at home or at work somewhere in the world listening to us. And we just very much look forward to working with all of you to really address this very huge challenge that we all have in front of us to providing the world with affordable, clean energy for everybody. So with this, I thank you once again, and I wish you a very, very nice rest of your day. Thank you, everybody, and have a very nice day. Bye.